Homosexuality and the Bible, Interpretations and Controversies. Understanding the historical and cultural context. To delve into the topic of homosexuality and the Bible, it is crucial first to understand the historical and cultural context in which the biblical texts were written. The Bible, comprising the Old and New Testaments, spans centuries of diverse cultural settings, each influencing the text's perspectives and interpretations. The Old Testament, primarily written in ancient Hebrew, reflects the cultural norms of the ancient Near East. In this context, the patriarchal society and the surrounding pagan cultures heavily influenced the laws and narratives found in the Hebrew Scriptures. Leviticus 18 verse 22 and 20:13 are the primary Old Testament passages addressing homosexuality. Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable, Leviticus 18 verse 22, and if a man has sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads, Leviticus 20 verse 13. These verses are part of the Holiness Code, a set of laws intended to distinguish the Israelites from their pagan neighbors. The context reveals that these laws were meant to maintain ritual purity and social order within the Israelite community. The severity of the penalties underscores the importance of these laws in maintaining the community's distinct identity. However, these ancient laws were also reflective of broader cultural taboos surrounding sexuality and purity. In the New Testament, the cultural context shifts to the Greco-Roman world, where the Apostle Paul's letters address issues related to homosexuality. Romans 1 verses 26 to 27 is one of the most cited passages. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men, and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Understanding Paul's context is essential. The Greco-Roman world had different attitudes toward sexuality, including prevalent practices of pederasty and same-sex relationships often involving power imbalances. Paul's letters aimed to address the moral and ethical standards for the Christian communities he was nurturing. His condemnation of same-sex relations must be understood within the broader context of his teachings on sexual ethics, which emphasized purity, self-control, and fidelity within marriage. The historical and cultural contexts of these biblical passages are crucial for interpreting their meanings and applications for contemporary readers. Recognizing the cultural norms and societal structures of ancient times can help us understand the original intent of these texts, which is the first step in applying them to today's diverse and evolving contexts. Diverse interpretations and theological perspectives. The interpretation of biblical texts concerning homosexuality varies widely among scholars, theologians, and religious communities. These interpretations often depend on different hermeneutical approaches, ranging from literal to contextual and progressive readings. A traditional or literal interpretation views the biblical condemnations of homosexuality as timeless moral directives. This perspective holds that the biblical texts clearly and unequivocally prohibit same-sex relationships, reflecting God's unchanging moral law. Advocates of this view often argue that the biblical standards of sexual ethics, established in the creation narratives of Genesis, are foundational and binding for all time. They emphasize that God's design for human sexuality is inherently heterosexual, as exemplified by the creation of Adam and Eve. On the other hand, a contextual or historical critical approach seeks to understand the cultural and situational factors influencing the biblical texts. Scholars using this method argue that the biblical prohibitions against same-sex relations were specific to the ancient contexts in which they were written. They suggest that these texts addressed issues such as idolatry, ritual impurity, and exploitative relationships rather than consensual, loving same-sex relationships as understood today. This perspective encourages re-examining the texts in light of contemporary knowledge and social changes, advocating for a more nuanced and compassionate understanding of sexual orientation. Progressive theological perspectives go further, arguing for the full inclusion and affirmation of LGBTQ+ individuals within the faith community. These theologians emphasize the overarching biblical themes of love, justice, and inclusion. They argue that the Bible's core message is one of radical hospitality and acceptance, as exemplified by Jesus' ministry. Progressive interpreters often highlight the absence of any direct teaching by Jesus on homosexuality and focus on his inclusive actions and teachings, such as his interactions with marginalized individuals and his call to love one another. One notable progressive theologian, Matthew Vines, argues in his book, God and the Gay Christian, that the traditional interpretations of the clobber passages, those few biblical texts that seem to condemn homosexuality, are misapplied when used to denounce loving, committed same-sex relationships. Vines and others argue that a reinterpretation of these texts, informed by historical context and modern understandings of sexuality, is necessary for a faithful and compassionate Christian witness. The Episcopal Church, the United Church of Christ, and certain branches of the Lutheran and Presbyterian churches are examples of denominations that have adopted more inclusive stances toward LGBTQ+ individuals. These communities have re-evaluated their theological positions in light of contemporary understandings of human sexuality, emphasizing the need for the church to be a place of welcome and affirmation for all people. These diverse interpretations reflect the broader theological debate within Christianity about how to read and apply the Bible. This debate encompasses issues of scriptural authority, the role of tradition, and the need for ongoing revelation and reformation within the Church. The varying perspectives on homosexuality illustrate the dynamic and contested nature of biblical interpretation, highlighting the importance of dialogue and discernment in the faith community. Stories of LGBTQ+ Christians: Faith, Struggle, and Acceptance. The lived experiences of LGBTQ+ Christians provide powerful testimonies to the intersection of faith, struggle, and acceptance. These stories offer valuable insights into the real-world implications of theological debates and the transformative potential of inclusive communities. One compelling narrative is that of Justin Lee, founder of the gay Christian network, Now Q Christian Fellowship. In his book, Torn: Rescuing the Gospel from the Gays vs. Christians Debate, Lee shares his journey as a devout evangelical Christian who came to terms with his sexuality. Raised in a conservative Christian home, Lee experienced deep internal conflict as he struggled to reconcile his faith with his sexual orientation. His story highlights the profound impact of exclusionary theology on LGBTQ+ individuals and the critical need for compassionate, informed dialogue within the Church. Another powerful testimony is that of Vicki Beeching, a prominent Christian worship leader and songwriter. In her memoir, Undivided: Coming Out, Becoming Whole, and Living Free from Shame, Beeching recounts her journey of coming out as a lesbian and the subsequent backlash she faced from the Christian music industry and religious community. Her story underscores the courage required to live authentically and the importance of finding supportive faith communities that affirm and celebrate LGBTQ+ identities. The stories of LGBTQ+ Christians often reveal a common theme: the quest for belonging and acceptance within their faith communities. Many have faced rejection and discrimination, leading to deep spiritual and emotional wounds. However, their resilience and unwavering faith also testify to the transformative power of love and acceptance. Inclusion and affirmation can profoundly impact the lives of LGBTQ+ individuals, fostering healing and spiritual growth. Churches that embrace LGBTQ+ members often witness the enrichment of their community life, as diverse gifts and perspectives are valued and celebrated. Affirming congregations become sanctuaries of hope and belonging, embodying the inclusive love of Christ. For example, the Metropolitan Community Church, MCC, was founded specifically to serve the LGBTQ+ community. MCC congregations provide a safe space for LGBTQ+ individuals to worship, grow in their faith, and find supportive community. The church's ministry reflects a commitment to social justice and equality, advocating for the rights and dignity of LGBTQ+ people within and beyond the church. Similarly, the Reformation Project, founded by Matthew Vines, seeks to promote LGBTQ+ inclusion in the church through education, advocacy, and community building. The organization equips Christians with theological resources and support to foster more inclusive and affirming congregations. Their work underscores the importance of education and dialogue in challenging exclusionary practices and promoting a more inclusive church. The stories of LGBTQ+ Christians also highlight the ongoing need for reconciliation and healing within the broader Christian community. Many have experienced profound harm from exclusionary theology and practices, leading to estrangement from their faith and community. Efforts to foster reconciliation must address these wounds with humility, compassion, and a commitment to justice. By listening to and amplifying the voices of LGBTQ+ Christians, the Church can learn valuable lessons about resilience, authenticity, and the inclusive love of God. Their testimonies challenge the Church to live out its calling to be a place of radical hospitality and unconditional love, reflecting the inclusive ministry of Jesus. The path forward: building an inclusive and affirming church. The path forward for the Church involves building a more inclusive and affirming community that reflects the radical love and hospitality of Jesus. This journey requires a commitment to ongoing theological reflection, compassionate dialogue, and practical actions that support and celebrate LGBTQ+ individuals. One critical step is fostering education and awareness within the Church. Providing opportunities for congregations to learn about the historical, cultural, and theological contexts of the biblical texts concerning homosexuality can promote more informed and compassionate interpretations. Educational programs, book studies, and workshops led by theologians and LGBTQ+ Christians can facilitate this learning process. Church leaders play a vital role in modeling and promoting inclusion. Pastors and clergy can advocate for LGBTQ+ inclusion from the pulpit, in pastoral care, and through community outreach. Their leadership sets the tone for the congregation and can inspire others to embrace a more inclusive vision of the church. Creating safe and affirming spaces within the church is also essential. This involves not only welcoming LGBTQ+ individuals but actively supporting their full participation in the life of the church. Affirming policies, inclusive language, and visible signs of support, such as pride flags or statements of welcome, can signal a church's commitment to inclusion. Pastoral care and counseling must also be inclusive and affirming. Providing support for LGBTQ+ individuals navigating their faith and identity is crucial. Pastoral counselors should be trained in LGBTQ+ issues and equipped to offer compassionate and informed care. Support groups and peer networks within the church can provide additional resources and community. Advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights and justice is another important aspect of building an inclusive church. The church's prophetic voice can speak out against discrimination and injustice, advocating for the rights and dignity of LGBTQ+ individuals within society. This advocacy aligns with the biblical call to justice and the inclusive ministry of Jesus. Finally, celebrating the gifts and contributions of LGBTQ+ individuals enriches the church community. Recognizing and valuing the diverse talents, perspectives, and experiences that LGBTQ+ members bring fosters a more vibrant and dynamic faith community. Inclusive worship, leadership opportunities, and community activities that celebrate diversity reflect the fullness of God's creation. The journey toward an inclusive and affirming church is ongoing and requires a collective effort. By committing to education, advocacy, and compassionate action, the church can become a place where all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, find love, acceptance, and belonging. This vision of an inclusive church reflects the heart of the gospel, embodying the radical love and hospitality of Jesus. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends and family.